Hi, welcome to Di's Home and Garden. Today I'm going to do a project involving sewing. So if sewing isn't your thing, give it a miss. But you may just like to watch it to see how things get done. So once you see it done, you'll realise it's really simple. You don't need I was going to say you don't need sewing skills. You don't need advanced sewing skills. You just need basic sewing skills for this. So what I mean by basic, you just need to know how to use a sewing machine and sew a straight line. And when I'm talking about a straight line, it's only 23 centimetres long, but you'll be doing lots of them. So what am I making? I'm going to be making bunting. Now, I've made bunting a few times before, and I'll choose a specific fabric. I'll choose, it depends if it's going to be against a wall. So then if it is, it's going to be hung against a wall, I'll choose a fairly plain backing fabric. And I like to use usually a combination of 3 or 4 different fabrics which have a common theme. The colours blend in very well. So that's how I do it. This time, I don't know, I haven't really spoken about it too much on my channel, but I have a goal. Everybody sets, what do they call, New Year's resolutions. Well, I never called it that. I just say, this year I am working on a goal, and my goal this year is to use what I have. A lot of people will say I'm doing a no spend year, meaning they don't buy anything new. Any spending is just to replace any worn out items or any worn out clothing, but they don't go out and buy a new pair of shoes just because they feel like it. It's not that. That's not the reason why I'm doing it. Like everybody, we like to declutter. So this year, working towards my goals of using what I have already made about 8 jumpers for my grandkids. Now, I don't have a whole lot all in the one colour, so they're striped jumpers. I will show you some photos later in the video if you're interested. But what I'm doing here, I'm going to be using my scrap fabric. Whenever I sew and I have offcuts, the really little ones I get rid of. I don't keep a lot of the little ones because I just had too much. I mean, I've been sewing now for 40 years. So I'll just show you in 1 minute all my stash. So here is my stash of offcuts. Really a bit too small to do anything with, but too big to get rid of. So for some of them, like this one, now, for some of them which are a little small, I'm going to sew pieces together. So this is a really, really long strip. So I can make a square out of that. But there are different textures. This is a bit of fleece, but that's okay. I'm going to use all different types. I've got some plains. I've got some stuff I use. And I was talking about the lycra earlier. Here's some of that lycra that I bought. Well, now that really is 80s colours. It just screams all that neon. But it's going to be great for bunting. It doesn't matter that it's lycra. Actually, I'm looking at that piece and thinking, hang on a minute there. I think that might be big enough to make a pair of shorts. It might be big enough to make 2 pairs of shorts. That's not going to go in it. So that's removed. But look at this. Lovely fabric to make some bunting from. You know, little pieces like this. Lots of long strips that I can sew together. Lovely and colourful. So, sorry, I hope I'm not making you dizzy with moving the camera around too much. So normally if I was making bunting, I would lay all my fabric out and I cut the triangles. I'll turn it around, the triangles, so that we've got one triangle here, and then as I cut this, another triangle develops. So we've got our fabric doubled over, and we're cutting triangles both ways. So we're cutting one here, we're cutting one there, and then we come and do the next one. So we get top and bottom triangles out of it. But because these are small amounts, I'm doing them individually. So I'll use my my rotary cutter. This will be my guide. I can just go down the edge of it to cut the fabric. And as I said, some of those strips aren't big enough to cut this out of, so I'll just do a little bit of sewing and we'll have some joins. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut out a whole lot of fabric and then I'll come back. Okay, so we are back after quite a few weeks break, and we're excuse me, and we're getting back into continuing with this project. So if you take a look down here, you can see that I've got all my triangles sewn together. So they are sewn. Some of them I haven't trimmed the thread. Now the next step in this process is just grabbing my trusty chopstick. The next step in this process is to turn them so that the seams are now inside, and we need our chopstick because we want nice points on our triangles. Now you'll see that when I turn them, we end up with the seam poking out the top. You can see that that's not even. So what I'll do, I'll iron them and then I'll take my scissors and I'll just cut that and trim it back so that it's nice and even. I don't know if you can see that. Just put my hand behind it so that it is nice and even along the top. And I have 94 triangles here, so that's going to take me quite some time to do, to turn them, to iron them and to trim them. But once that's done, we're on to our next step of the final step, sewing them on to the cord at the top. So we'll come back when I've done that, but I'm warning, it may be another couple of days. Okay, I've been busy and I have turned them all the right way, ironed them and clipped them. So let's look at what the next step is. So here they all are. That's they're the scraps. And I've got a big pile and they're all ironed in the right way. Now the next thing I need to do is to get some bias binding. Now I've purchased this bias binding, but you can make your own. There are some nifty little gadgets out there to help you make bias binding, though you can make bias binding without it. I have done it. And there are lots of videos on how to make bias binding. So what I'm going to do, I'll just take this bias binding. Now that's the inside of the bias binding. I'm going to fold that over, but I'm going to sandwich my pieces. I'll just clear a spot here and then I'll show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to sandwich my pieces into the bias binding. So that's going to come down there, and then I'm going to sew that so that it's encased in the bias binding. And what I generally do, I use my pieces as my spacer. So I'll put one up and then I'll leave the space of one. Actually they look a bit big, so I'll probably leave the space of half a one. Just mark it and then I'll put the next one in. Yeah, that looks good. So that'll be about that much. But you can butt them up against each other if you want, but I generally put a space. So as I'm working on it, I'll work out what space I might want. I'm thinking, do I have a ruler here? I've only got an inch one. Perhaps about 2 inches or 2.5 inches I might actually leave between each one. and I've got some plain sides and I've got some which are double-sided with pattern. So I mix and match. So we might have that one that way and this one this way. That way, from the other side, when you're looking at it, it's plain pattern, plain pattern. I try to do it that way as well. Okay, let's get going, and I will come back and show you when I've finished. And there you have it. That's 30 metres of bunting, all done, all made from scraps. I've just strung it up across the yard so you can see. Yeah, I mean, if I was doing this for a party, I wouldn't have it that low. I'd have it strung higher. But I've just put it out so that you can see it all. So what this is going to be used for is when the family have parties, it's going to be doing the rounds from person to person whenever we have something on and we want to decorate the place. Yeah, we didn't quite use the 30 metres, but I did use either end. I've put a really long lead on it. As you can see, it's just here. There's a long lead on it there. And that means that it can be tied up and strung up. You know, it gives it a bit of extra length if it's needed. But there you have it. All from scrap, all from stuff that might have been not used for anything else. Anyway, there we go. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos from me, hit the subscribe button and click on that bell so that you'll be notified every time a video comes up. And if you think that there's somebody who might like this video, someone who's a sewer, or that project is really a very easy project to do. You don't need to have sewing skills, just need to be able to operate a sewing machine and yeah, sew in a straight line basically, but it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. So see you again on the next video, and thanks for joining me on this one. Bye for now.